Welcome to a new episode of Advancing Consciousness series with Franco Di Nicola. This is a place where people can come to gain further insight and clarity as to what is going on and how we can shift things on a personal and global level, while also accessing higher levels of consciousness and awareness. We bring this series to you free of charge so that many are able to access this information. However, if you resonate with what Franco shares and you would like to support his work to get more content out, contributions are welcomed and greatly appreciated. A link is in the description and will be provided in the chat if you feel guided to do so. Also, we have many previous workshops, such as the most recent, Bringing Out the New You to Play in the New World, along with our membership program, Let's Talk About You, where like-minded people come together bi-weekly to talk about the topics requiring deeper understanding and clarity. All of these are available on Teachable, and we encourage you to check them out as they are great resources at very affordable prices to assist in better understanding this human experience. The Teachable link will also be provided in the chat and is also in the description. And lastly, don't forget to share. As more of us come together who are creating shifts in themselves, the more effective it will be to shift things globally. Thank you for joining us and being part of the change. Enjoy today's broadcast.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Advancing Consciousness series, and tonight or this afternoon we're on episode 17, part 4. So as we've continued down the rabbit hole, as they say, we're going to take a look at some other parts of this episode and just go a little deeper in certain areas and then cover certain things. I was hoping to cover a lot of it during the earlier parts, but it looks like it just keeps expanding. So we'll let it play out in that way. Hopefully in the next ones we'll. So thank you again for being part of this and to invest in yourself. And when I say invest your time, invest your energies to look at ways to trigger, to stimulate, to awaken, to resonate within you so that you can continue to move forward in a big way. And we're doing this all collectively, so it's perfect that we're coming together to do so. So some of you are on a live stream, other you are going to be watching it as a recording. Regardless, this is there for you. If you're alive, you can always send in comments or questions that we will address along the way. If it's in alignment with exactly what we're talking about, we will address it. If not, we will hold on to it and utilize it and build it in to another episode or another part in this case. So what I wanted to carry on is the first thing. We were talking about the 5G. I just wanted to throw something in because there's still a lot of concern around that and so forth. So what I wanted to say that the 5G does operate at a certain frequency which creates noise within our body, noise within our head and our body. Now, depending on how much metal you have in you, in regards to heavy metals and so forth, it will have more of a sense to pick it up. But also the water molecules, what we call water molecules in the body, will also pick up those frequencies. What I mean about the noise is that the level of communication within all the stages of ourselves, meaning the body, the human entity, the soul, and the overall operating system, what we call the mind itself, the big massive computer that is extremely powerful. The 5G in itself, depending on the stages, will create certain levels of noise so that the communication somewhat gets a little bit interfered. Now, this is nothing to be afraid of. What I'm suggesting at this point in time is that for us to bypass that, we're going to go into a higher frequency. And fear definitely is not one component that's going to make you play with that. So with that noise, you're going to find that at times, the part that you hear the most or will hear the most is your ego mind, because in that frequency of the 5G, it has a little bit more power in the sense of communicating because it's in the same range that it operates. Now, in saying that, we have a collective choice, have it roll out, have it being fully activated. We have the option to see it, how it goes into the different stages and so forth, or just come to a termination where it does not get supported. Now, many of you have seen across the world, there are people that are now, you can call it objecting, or resisting the whole idea of just rolling it out without any testing and so forth. So the testing part is really just to see what's going on, in the sense, can you prove to us that this technology may have certain advantages when it comes to speed of communication and internet, but is there a price to pay? Is there a backlash? Is there an interference that happens with the body? Does it actually align and so forth? Now, as I said, as your vibration continues to increase and so forth, you get out of the range, you're not even affected in any way, shape, or form. But we still have a collective freedom. Now, do we get angry at the people that are rolling it out, and do we go into fight mode? No, you make yourself heard in the sense of saying, okay, we are not accepting this as part of it, because we are the ones that are playing with it, utilizing it, and also in the environment of that particular frequency and so forth. So realistically, with the 5G, yes, see it that it has the potentiality to roll out and play out certain roles, not to be in the state of fear, but at the same time exercising your free choice of saying, you know, I am not consenting, I am not agreeing with this. And the more of us that do that, we'll have the message go out, so that in fact, instead of, you know, just putting it out there without any research or anything of that nature, we will at one point or another be able to say, okay, unless you can prove otherwise, we're not open to that. Now, if it does continue to roll out at any point, we can turn it off at any point in time, but at the same time, not to be afraid of it, not to feel that in some way, if you don't do something about it, that, you know, we're pretty well doomed. And this is kind of an idea. But that's not the case. We still have the capacity to even mutate, modify, I guess there's a better word, modify those. And there are other alternatives that can be used, which will, you know, be rolled out as we agree to. So right now, with everything, including whatever's playing out right now, we're just being pushed to the max so that we have the capacities to see, wait a minute here, okay? We're not the victims, and we're not open to play that game any longer. We're not open to just take whatever's being shared. We want to understand what's going on, and we are in a position where we can say, this is okay, this is not okay for us to our playground and experience. But at the same time, you know, you do that in a neutrality point, because it's not about afraid or right, wrong, good, bad, in the sense of, do we include it or not include it? And right now, as you can see, there are more and more people. Yes, maybe they are concerned. Yes, maybe they are just reacting. Yes, you know, but we're making ourselves heard, because basically the control structures and whatever else are saying, oh, we're going to roll it out, nobody's going to complain, or even if they do complain, as long as they get angry, you know, we have the capacity to keep pushing it through. So at this point is, no, we're not open to this whole idea, and let's take a look at how we can use this in a way where it's beneficial. Okay, so that's so much on the 5G part of it. So it does create noise in the system and so forth, but we can bypass the noise, but at the same time, we also can spend more time to connect with ourselves so that we clear the channels, and we're actually adjusting the frequency band of communication within our body. So it doesn't matter what's coming through us from the outside through these transmissions, it does not interfere. So if we're still in a very lower frequency and so forth, then it creates a little bit more interference, and it can activate certain things that we may have as codes within our body, because all of us have codes in our bodies that can activate all types of fun experiences, and which people call ailments and diseases and whatever else. But again, we have that other component. The other component is the higher aspect of you, which is basically the body, the human entity, and the soul, saying, does this serve us or not? Do we need this as a tool to get our attention, to shift, or not. If it does, then yes, we'll activate it. We can turn it off at any point. We can bring the severity to a certain point. There's a flexibility of all that. You're never, ever out of control. The ego mind will create that illusion and keep projecting that there's no way, everybody's telling me how to live my life and whatever else. And this is the thing, the self-empowerment is to bring life to your terms. Now, there's an important part about that part, because what terms are we talking about? Is it the program terms or your true natural terms? And we'll look at that a little bit more closely, because in essence, when we're looking at our own terms, it's from a higher aspect, which is in alignment with the body, the human entity, the soul, and it is now saying, okay, this is what is my way of life, because it's part of my expression, experience, and also how I have an offering to this playground with all of my playmates, being all my brothers and sister souls that exist throughout the whole planet. And how do I come here to play in that terms rather than the programmed terms? Because, all of us have been programmed, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go along. And I know I've indicated that along the way too, where we've been programmed to believe, think, feel, and respond certain ways. We've put in all these parameters, what life represents, what it means, how do we define ourselves, how do we categorize ourselves, how do we label ourselves, who are we based on these labels and based on a projected collective. You have to understand the projective collective is only a reflection of saying, hey, I'm showing you every aspect that you're not so that you can blossom as you are, which is that beautiful, unique, powerful soul that has come here to do amazing things in conjunction with your human entity that's had many, many lives. Let's go out and play. And the body saying, let's go for it, and sharing its part of it. So it's not so much the labels, because the labels were something that we adopted, took on as part of our experience for a short period of time. However, some of us got attached to it, and we're just basically now creating the environment, and this is being supported on so many levels, that we are moving out of those labels and definitions and so forth of ourselves, and even any memories of the past that we have labeled and categorized as something that actually still has an effect on how we create our reality forward. So all of that is being purged out so that you, the newest aspect of you, the most current version of you, can actually emerge and come through. So this is the thing. Now, one other thing that a comment came in regards to someone saying that in spirituality there seems to be no polarity. Well, yes. It's true in its natural state. However, there's a transitional part that a lot of people get caught up in. Yes, mainstream does create lots of polarity, it projects it, and so forth. So does the alternative in many cases. While they're going through an integration part, while they're sorting things out. The spiritual component is when you're in your true nature, then there is no right, wrong, good, bad, and any form of polarity. You're basically neutrality. You're 0 point. You are unity consciousness. You see things as a beautiful dance. There is no good dance or bad dance. There are certain dances that support you more where you are and some don't. And it's a matter of bringing it all in. So until that happens, a lot of individuals, when they go there, they get into the judgment part. Okay. Judgment part, where, we compare, we start looking into, and the polarity is still there. But once we get grounded more within ourselves, more access to source consciousness, source essence of who we are, there is no judgment. You see beauty in everything. Doesn't matter if they're playing negative role or positive role. You're not condemning one or another. You're not focusing on light and dark. You're seeing the beautiful dance that's merging and converging and creating that what you call the 0 point neutrality, unification, and all of that as part of the experience. So if you're seeing that there is no polarity, then you've already got to the integration point and you've cleared out any of that. But many are not. where, you see a lot of that being reflected. So the reason I spoke that way and mentioned it was only so that you would understand that that is part of something that we go through but clear out. Now, it doesn't mean you have to, because you can wake up one morning and say, wow, I see the beauty in everything. You don't see anything right, wrong, good, or bad. However, now you get into the driver's seat from another state of consciousness through that unity consciousness and so forth, and create an environment, a reality, a projection, a co-creation that is in that alignment, that does not have comparison, does not have separation, does not have, because a lot of times until you get there, there's not only the judgment, but there's also the separation. Whoop, that's a P there. There's a separation. So it's not so much there's not the separation of, like you said, like I said, the dark light and all of that stuff, the good, the bad, and all of that. You see the whole dance, because at that point, you understand that all of it is serving. Maybe certain parts become obsolete, and a lot of it has come obsolete in the positive, negative part, but at the same time, the separation is not there of what we play. So that's the whole point of understanding. You say, well, I'm becoming a spiritual being. Absolutely amazing. That's great. What do I mean by that? The spiritual aspect, the component of all of this is meaning that you're becoming more aware that you're more than this body, more than your conditioning, stories and programs. You're more than what you see as a reality at this moment. You're now seeing yourself as that sourceness. You're seeing yourself as this infinite being. You're seeing yourself in pure potentiality. You see yourself as source creator. And then that's brought into the experience of being in a body. It's not separate from the body. It just brings it into the experience of the body, which upgrades the body, upgrades the human entity, upgrades the whole reality that you're creating, all the co-realities you create with all the other playmates around you and throughout the whole planet, and then it expands from there. So that's the part that we're talking about. Now, we have to understand, this is one other thing. Remember, I talked about the inverted matrix, okay? And I also indicated and said, basically, the inverted matrix transmission is gone, has been gone since December. We still have the ego that is the software that still projects this inverted matrix 2D and inverted 3D. However, we have to realize also at the same time, as much as the transmission's gone and the ego is the operating system, the ego still relies on all its past creations and co-creation. So you have to look at it. The mainstream still is projecting inverted matrix 2D and 3D, which is about separation, it's about survival, it's about struggle, it's about right, wrong, good, bad, it's about certain acceptance and whatever else. It still promotes that very heavily because it was the main construct that's still alive. You have to understand, all the players involved are still all running on these egos. Anybody that's engaging in there are being fed through the ego. So, because you have to look at it, even the mainstream stuff, you're talking about the music, you're talking about movies, you're talking about all types of videos and so forth, you're talking about the mainstream news, you're talking about educational systems, you're talking about other people communicating amongst each other. What is the standard of how to play the game of life? How it needs to be that we are, this is how we play the game. So, but all of those rules, you have to understand that all the rules that are still being projected was all created when the inverted matrix 2D, inverted 3D were quite active. Okay? So now, even though there's going to be a dissembling of sort, disintegrating of sort along the way, as long as we're focusing on any of this stuff, we're still focusing, we're still stimulating the ego and still giving it some power to be able to navigate and direct us. So that's the important part. We got to understand. whatever you're exposed to, whatever you're watching, whatever it is, you know, as much as you feel that it may not have an effect on you, it is stimulating old programs within yourself. It's actually reinforcing stuff that you're choosing to dissolve or purge out of you in your operating system, because all of this stuff gets into the operating system, and we're going to talk about how that even works. So we're talking about that. We have to understand a lot of the alternative is still, again, most of it was all infiltrated, inverted matrix. So it's the same thing. So we have to look at it so that it is not reflective of that. And if it is reflective of that, you basically have to bring in that organic 3, organic 5D observation and perception. So if you're going in and the alternative is saying, these are the bad guys, we got to get them out, we got to arrest them, we got to hang them, we got to do whatever. You know, we've been treated unfairly, that we've been, you know, enslaved or anything of that nature. Well, it's great to see the game, but if you're giving power to that, you have to understand a lot of it that's projected is still very much the inverted matrix 2D and 3D, and it stimulates the ego. So if you're going to look for the demon, you know, the demon in life, or the one that caused you the problem, and that could be anything, could be even in your own dynamics of your family and so forth, you're still reflecting and strengthening the operating system of the ego. Okay, so the reason I'm pointing this out so that we pay attention to it doesn't mean there's nothing in it of value. There is. However, you now have to look at it and say, how much power am I going to give this? Okay, great. It's good to know that these things are happening. How can we take steps and actions to shift it? How can we say, okay, you no longer have to play the game any longer. We no longer have to support the old system that we had before. We no longer have to see the limits, because a lot of times what the limits are saying it only can go this way. So even the part of us moving forward, even the idea of saying, well, this is going to take a while, and the only way it's going to change if we take out all of these things out of the equation, then what are we doing? We are basically following a protocol that says it's done this way, where we can actually expedite it, and we are being supported in that expedition, or expediting, whatever, to move it a lot quicker, more efficiently along the way. So at the same time, first, we're in the dream state. We don't question anything. Then that nagging that we have inside is like, this is not making any sense. There's something off here, and it gets stronger and stronger. Then you start doing alternative research, and you find the alternative, which is great because it creates a breaking of that pattern and then going down. But you have to also pay attention. Is it now looking and demonizing all of this, or is it seeing there's bigger picture to this, and we can create another reality, an expanded version of this, rather than giving our power to this, our focus to this? It's now looking at, great, I'm going to see what else is there, and then I'm going to create my own coherence within myself with these resources of information. Now, information is only as good as it affects you in the sense of stimulating your higher awareness, stimulating your own knowing, because we are very powerful knowing, except that we go into a hypnotic state and an amnesia sort of thing from that. But now we're being stimulated, you know, like restarted in a sense, so that we can now tap into it. So this is there to see, not to create more, what do you call it, enemies or anything of that nature, and saying, well, these are the enemy, we got to destroy them. No, it's just showing you how the game is played so that you can actually say, oh, okay, all the value I put there, I'm going to take that value, but at the same time, I'm not going to go in the right, wrong, good, bad, new enemy, let's go kill them, let's go do this and that, because then you're basically still in this lower band of frequency. So every time that you're seeing it as a negative, you're going right back to the lower frequency. What's here? 2D, inverted 3D. we're talking inverted matrix, all of that is very alive in there. When you're going into here. Here we're going into what we can call organic 3D and 5D. And if you don't know the difference, I've talked about it in other episodes. But anyways, the organic, that's an I here, just in case. All right, so when you're in here, you're basically operating within this. In this frequency, there is no judgment. In organic 3D and 5D, you see the game for what the game is. And you see that we are, quite experienced in playing the game a certain way. We've gotten to a point where the game is no longer necessary in the same fashion, and we start taking steps, starting from ourselves and collectively. The changes you make in yourself already is a powerful transmitter in creating change all over. But at the same time, sharing that without going in as the preacher, going out there in a way where just by examples, by just sharing different ways of you seeing it, but you always present it in a way, this is my observation, this is what I've noticed, this is how I've taken steps to certain things, and these are the results I'm seeing, and I'm also constantly studying and expanding and getting a deeper understanding, and let each individual to make that choice, because the discomfort that they are experiencing is going to continue to increase for all of us at this point. So the more you create an alignment, the less discomfort we have. The discomfort is the tool that's being used to stimulate us to keep moving. So right now, what we're going through has created a lot of opportunities to accentuate many, many different emotional components of it, bring up certain program stories, but also a space for us to really reflect and to look at all of this stuff. So when it comes to the spiritual stream, so we can still be operating within the inverted matrix 2D and inverted 3D, depending on how you look at it. If you have judgment, you have separation, superiority over one another, or the fact that I'm a spiritual being, I'm this, I'm light, or whatever, and you're going into that, you're basically operating here. Because when you're in the organic 3D and 5D, you don't even have to publicize that. Yes, this is where I'm at, is an understanding, but you don't even have to say it. So you're basically living life at that frequency. You're living life with that level of consciousness. You're living life as a living life, not as a robotic life. Because just the fact that you're existing, yes, you create a certain energy imprint and an expression, but that doesn't mean we're living our essence. We could be just going through the motion, but not living our essence. Living our essence is basically living life, and each day, each moment, you're accentuating more and more the grander aspect of yourself. You're becoming more self-discovered. You're becoming much more aware of who you are and how can I bring this. Because I've said it before, as souls, you've come here as a multidimensional being or essence of sourceness with your own specific signature and experience and skill sets that have taken on a body that has already its elevated consciousness to a certain level, and then merging with a beautiful human entity that you've now created a beautiful dance, but you come here to dance. We all come here to experience to some degree what's the playground like and how does it feel to be that way. But at the same time, we're not there to stay there. We didn't come here just for that. We came here to really accentuate every aspect of it. And that's what we're doing. So I just wanted to clarify all of that, that to pay attention in true clarity within yourself, you have no polarity. And the inverted matrix and stuff like that of right, wrong, good, bad, everything has to work backwards, superiority and all that stuff doesn't exist in any of this. It is just that. It's just the platform. It's the game. Okay? All right. So I can remove that. I just wanted to bring that clarity, and I thank the person that made the comment, because that helps to provide a little bit of additional clarity for people. so that, that there's no confusion. All right. We'll start with a blank slate. How's that? Miss Kimberly, is there anything that you'd like to? Okay. No, I just thought maybe you had something that you wanted to share with your grand wisdom and all the stuff that you have to offer. We're all amazing, of course. All right. So right now, depending on where you put your collective focus is what we stimulate one way or another. Now, the first thing is, if you're focusing the collective narrative or whatever that is, where everybody's at, if everybody's in fear or in crisis or feeling that, there's a demise of some sort coming in, then what happens is your focus goes there and you start to create things that match that. Why? Because you're tapping into that consciousness. You're tapping into that collective idea and energy around it. So if somebody starts saying to you, we got to be safe, we got to cover ourselves, we got to do this, we got to do that, we have to be locked up, or whatever it is, or whatever the story is from a collective perspective, you're going to create fears within yourself. You're going to create opportunities where you start to lock yourself up, in the sense you're afraid to do anything, or that in somehow you keep reinforcing that. So the focus of that, if we get into the focus of what I had over there in the alternative of everything is wrong, we got to fix it, we got to get everything, then you start creating this other emotional component that righteousness, and we got to, we have the bad people or whatever it is and all of that stuff, and your reality starts to reflect that, and your body responds that way. Your human entity gets affected to a degree. Your soul is feeling stifled or whatever it is. But the point here in all that, wherever we put the focus, we replicate what the focus is about. So, like I said, you replicate, you focus on what the mass hysteria or whatever else is that's playing out right now, then you're going to create along those lines. You're tapping into that energy. You're tapping into that collective consciousness. Because you have to understand, every collective, okay, are pockets of consciousness with pockets of responses and protocols. So what does that mean? That if I'm going to tap into this, which is very fear-based, if we're going to tap into that, what are we going to do? We're going to tap into fear, which alters our physical body. But to promote this fear, there's a lot of reasons, stories, programs, and ideas what we need to be afraid of. And what could happen and can happen, that we're outside of self-governance, we're outside of self-creation, we're outside of being in charge of our life, if we're going to focus in that regard. So if we're putting a lot of focus on that, then guess what? You're going to shape your life accordingly. Of course, that's going to become more and more uncomfortable, especially if you have agreed to really accentuate your experience and move forward. So you're going to end up creating a shift. So the other pockets of consciousness can be traditions, and what else can we call it? Traditions, ways of life, cultures, ways of life, cultures. Let me just put life, because there's so many varieties here. Ways of life. So traditions and cultural beliefs and ideas of I'm a male, I have to be this way. If I'm a female, I'm this way, depending on where you're born, whatever else. And if you tap into that, and that also applies to religion and so forth, or anything else we plug in. So we can tap into that, and that's a pocket of consciousness. And of course, there's many different pockets of consciousness. One is for tradition, one is for culture, one is for gender, one is for a certain part of the world. And then there's different factions of religious. These are all pockets of consciousness. So if you tap into any of that, that becomes part of your reference point, and you start to create accordingly. So you have to pay attention and say, okay, let me look at the different pockets of consciousness. And let me see that if that consciousness actually resonates with me? Is it a good reflection of who I am? Is it something that provides substantial benefit for me to put my energy there and to replicate what the belief is around that? Hopefully you understood that. Because what we're looking at is you want to make sure, if you're going to tap into any, and we'll look at this one as being open source. So what we're looking at, we're looking at all of this and saying, do I choose to have that pocket consciousness brought into my creation, brought into my reality, brought into my consciousness so that I now shape myself accordingly? So you can have a pocket of consciousness within your family dynamic. And how does that work? Well, if you believe that I need to be like them, then you're tapping into it. So now you're going to create your reality, govern yourself, shape yourself, make choices based on that collective consciousness. The same thing with religion or anything else, culture, or whatever it is. But then it's important, like I said earlier, that we have to look at it and say, do I actually match it? Is that what I came here to do now? Because yes, you could have adopted it before and it could have served you in a huge way, but is it really right now conducive? Is it supportive? Is it exactly what I am aligned to at this point? Because you may find that you will shift out of those and go into different pockets of consciousness, or even create your own, because you're basically a powerful individualized creator with all your co-creation. So by looking at it and say, well, how could I even shift away from that, is exactly what I was saying, that you pay attention, you see. If it doesn't match, you say, okay, that's great. I'm only going to use part of it. I'm going to use none of it. Or I want to use a lot of it. It's up to you. But what you do is you do this regularly. You are always checking, how much value do I give to any of this? How much of it do I introduce into my experience? How much do I introduce as part of my creation and mindset? Because that's all connected. So you become a little bit more, discriminating? No. Is that a good word?
To decide between two things?
Yeah. More attentive to what you choose to maintain. Where do I put my focus and what do I use? So right now, all of us, what we're doing is we're shifting away through a lot of these pockets of consciousness and now going into an internal source consciousness that we have within ourselves, and we create the reality out of that. One of the things, and I can talk about it from my own personal experience, during life, as a child and at different stages, my focus was looking at it and say, let me observe what others are doing. Let me see if I feel in resonance with it. Does it feel that I can try that out for a while just to get a taste of it or whatever? And then decide, but how long do I keep it is up to you. It was up to myself. So when people kept saying, well, why don't you follow our path? And you know, specifically in the family dynamics, you know, you are this culture, you got to represent the culture, you got to be part of this tradition and so forth. I would check in and say, well, how does this feel to me? Not because I want to be accepted, but how does it feel to me? Is it in resonance? Is it in harmony with what I see within myself? In most cases, it was not. So then I did not adhere to those pockets of consciousness, those instructions, their way of life. The other thing I looked at was also whatever they chose to experience, how they were reacting and responding to their own choices. For example, if they are following certain traditions and belief systems, I would also pay attention how satisfying, how joyful, how enriching they felt by observing how they responded, how they felt, how much governance or direction they had in their own life. And then by observing that, I'd say, wow, okay, I don't see them free. Because when it was offered, even for my own mother, for example, well, you got to be like one of us, whatever it is, and this is the way it's done because this is the way we're taught to do and whatever else. I'm looking at it, well, you're reflecting on happiness, you're reflecting sacrifice, you're reflecting that such powerful limits that you are not even free to create your own reality, that you're just following a pocket of consciousness or whatever that is. I'm not seeing a reflection here that would be appetizing or interesting or appealing to me. So if I'm not seeing anything that's appealing, then why would I replicate it? Why would I take those rules and build around it if it's not a match? And this is what we're doing. And the only point I'm saying that is that this is more in our presence right now, to pay attention to what resonates and doesn't. Certain things may resonate for a short period of time, but you allow it to go through the experience, and then when it stops resonating, you shift it. It wasn't a mistake, you just needed to go through those steps, or you needed to have completion of certain parts of the experience. That's all. So the point is, observing as an observer what is an offering from different clusters of consciousness, including the massive collective consciousness of what the human experience represents, you get to see how much of it do you want to bring in. Now, of course, we have to be attentive to, if you feel, say, well, I want this, I want that in my reality, well, that's great. You can choose to put that into your reality. However, at the same time, envision yourself. This is a step. You envision yourself having that for coming into your life, and how it even feels, and how you resonate with it. And then see yourself maintaining that for a period of time. You will notice a lot of times it really is not in resonance. It may appease your ego mind that turns around and says, oh yeah, that's important for us to have, and it is part of the game, because a lot of people chase after dreams. I want to fulfill my dream. Okay? But whose dream is it? Is it truly the essence of your dream, or is it a manufactured dream or a collective cluster dream? Oh, I want the big house, I want the cars, I want the girlfriend or boyfriend, I want the toys, I want this, I want that, and then I'll feel happy and all of that. Is that truly what you feel within the very core of yourself? Because in most cases, it's not. In most cases, it is a sense of a mind saying, when you have all of this, you're going to be happy. When you have all of this, you succeeded. Whenever you have all of this, you can feel good. But those are all programs that we're trying to respond and compensate for. But it's not about that. Not at all. So you need to go to the most core essence of yourself and say, how does these things fit into my life? Is it really in alignment with what I came here to do, what I feel guided to do, how I choose to experience life right now? It's always right now, because that is always changing. So you may have gone down a path of some sort where you've, gained some of the stuff that but you have to look at it. How does it fit in right now? So simplicity may come into place, but there's not a scarcity part either. It's not like, oh, I can't have anything. No, you can plug it in and see how it benefits you in your experience without replicating somebody else's collective idea of what it means. Like for you to have an idea that I'm not successful until I have X amount of money and all of these toys, first of all, that part is a story that you can't be happy until all of that stuff. In fact, we don't even want to go into happiness, because happiness is an opposite of sadness. We want to go into a joy-filled state. Can I be in joy no matter where I'm at? And what I plug in will just be part of the joy. It's not going to add it or subtract it. If I have it, great, I'm still in joy. If I don't have it, I'm still in joy, because I'm in joy of enjoying this experience, this current existence of where I am at right now. Because once we start to dissect that, look into it a little closer, you're going to find all the things that you thought were necessary and beneficial that would support your state is really not that important or even required. The simplicity, the connection, to be able to experience things where you're not tied down. Because there's two types of tying down. When you have a lot of stuff and you got to protect all this stuff and make sure you don't lose it, you're restricting, you're limiting your life. When you feel that you're in lack, you're restricting your life of experiencing all until you get all that stuff. So there's the other restriction. I got to stay focused. I got to set my goals. I got to go down that path because I got to get to that point. I'm not saying you don't, but at the same time, is it really at this point an important focus for you? Is it really going to serve you? Because a lot of times we can start heading down that path and we'll start to notice, wow, this is not that appealing anymore. This is not so exciting anymore. I've also noticed that that appeal that was once there doesn't even turn me on or anything like that. I don't feel that sense of, yeah, that's purposeful. That is in alignment with myself. So you just really have to pay attention to this. Because right now, with all of the stuff that's going on, you know, as much as the fear has been elevated, you're noticing that it doesn't matter how much is being pumped out, we're decreasing in, so you could say, well, we're becoming desensitized, yes, in a way, but at the same time, we're not sustaining it. Why? Because we're giving ourselves the opportunity to kind of see something more than what that is there. So these are signs within ourselves that we are choosing to start looking at things bigger. So the thing is, even the returning back to life the same way we were before, for majority of the people, is becoming less and less appealing. It's almost like, you know something? Because I've noticed this lately with the trend of what's going on. People want to get back to the norm. And every time it gets closer to possibility going back to the norm, and there's an extension of it going back to the norm, there's a part saying, oh, okay, great, I get a little bit more time because I really don't want to get into the norm. This whole thing of quarantine and whatever it is a good excuse for me to stay unplugged for a while and to really take a close look at what is really important in my life. What is really what I choose to experience? Because I've sensed it, okay, there's a frustration of being locked up. Yes, absolutely. And that's increasing. The unsettledness and whatever else. It's like, okay, it's time to go and play, go do whatever. But at the same time, I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to go back to, the grind I had before. I'm not saying across the board everybody, but more and more people are doing that. Why? Because now they're looking at what they've been focusing on, what they've been, and they give themselves the chance to look at, and they start looking at, oh, okay, does this actually make sense for me anymore? Is it still in alignment for me? And that, I'll leave it at that. Okay, good. We're doing good? All right. So the next thing. I already started talking about it before, so I'm just going to skim right through it. Whatever we're exposed to, the media, whatever it is, please keep in mind, it does. Even though you're saying, well, you know something? It's not real. It's just a movie. It's not real. It's just music. It's not real, whatever. To the mind, you're giving resources. So your subconscious mind is recording all of that, and it's becoming part of the library. The subconscious mind is not going to distinguish movie, reality. It just has visions of what you're seeing. And especially the movies are so great now, and the media is so intensified, that it leaves an impression. So you're basically keep storing whatever you're seeing and whatever else. Now, I'm not saying you don't enjoy any part of it, but look at how much focus you're going to put in there and then decide. Because this becomes material, building material for the ego. Because the ego is going to build the story and all of that. A lot of times, you think you saw something in your own reality, but it was only something that you saw in either a movie, a news clip, whatever, and then the ego goes, oh, remember what happened there? Can you see what happened there? And even though if it refers it to, well, it's happening to those people all over the world. There's people dying left, right, and center. You go outside there and you're going to do this or that. That shapes you because the ego is continuously trying to find whatever material they're going in. So whatever you're putting the focus on in around you, in a way, it continues to shape you. So in a way, you want to look at what am I allowing within myself to come into my operating system? Because if I'm going to be purging, I'd rather have things that provide different instead of having one stream of resource coming in all the time. So if we're just looking at the mainstream all the time, then you're building your information there. So if you're taking in things from both, like I was saying before, from the mainstream, the alternative, the spiritual, you're plugging all of that in, and you're going to pick and pieces all of that. And anytime the ego wants to build something out of that, thank you, and we're not going there, you now are more in charge of what you're shaping within your reality. So we have to understand one other thing. The purging process that we're going through is purging all of the stuff that we've taken out in an unconscious state that we have adopted. Because the way we think, the way we feel, the way we respond, the way we see the world, the way we create, what we can create, what limits we have, what possibilities we have, what expanded version of ourselves can be, all shaped on by what we've experienced, learned from the mass media. Meaning not only the movies and the music and all of the other stuff, but through education, through all of the stuff, through all the different channels. Okay? So all of it has shaped us. Now when we're going through this purging, we're taking it out and getting rid of all of those things because we're done with it. We're no longer needing that as a reference point. So you're taking all of these parts of it and you're unplugging it. Okay? And how do you unplug it? Well, now I can't tell you that. That's a secret. Just kidding. So how do you unplug it? You look at the program. You ask yourself, do I still need the program? You acknowledge the program. You thank the program. You love the program. You release the program. You free it from you. You thank you. I love you. But it has to be genuine. You're basically going to the point of seeing it's a program. It's a story. It's something that I looked at, that I referred to, and I'm using as part of my creation. And I'm going to go through it and just gently purge every part of it. And of course we're being accentuated to purge because you have to understand most of the stuff that we put into our archives are coming from where? I'm not going to tell you. No, it's from the inverted matrix, 2D, inverted 3D. It's still being projected that way, so we're taking that in. You were going to say something?
Oh, Kelly's just asking, what about books, novels, same as movies, etc.?
Absolutely. Absolutely, especially if you get into the depth of it. So you really have to be attentive to look at it and say, I'm reading a book, but you have to always, in a way, see, because look at it this way. How many of you can ask yourselves, how many of you have left an impression based on what you've watched, what you've read, what you've exposed yourself to? It leaves an impression. And not only an impression, it becomes part of your reality. But the thing is, you become more selective, is really the case. More selective of how far. If you're going to have fun with it, see it as fun, but at the same time, realizing that it's leaving an impression, and if it starts to show up as the impression that is coming bleeding into your experience creation, then you want to acknowledge that, oh, okay, I took that on, and I was looking at it and so forth, now I choose to let it go. But not in a state of fear, but in a state of empowerment and saying, okay, great. So, the novels and so forth, are based, a lot of times they're experiences and so forth, but then there are stuff that is really pushing, accentuating the 2D, inverted 3D, inverted matrix, and the unnatural state of the human condition. So if you're looking at violence, you're looking at that, we're basically saying, oh, we are violent, which is not true. We're just programmed to act that way, but that we're violent, that we can't trust one another, we can't love one another because our heart can be broken, we can have, be taken advantage or anything of that nature. You want to look at all of that because that becomes part of your way of seeing things and filtering things. There are times that people see so much stuff or being exposed to heartbreaks and whatever else of what they've seen that they are so afraid to get into a relationship. They're afraid to actually take a step forward in doing something new, or they're afraid in one way or another to really step out of the box, sort of thing. So you want to notice that so that you now come to the point, okay, this is what I've done. I've created that. I can acknowledge it. I can experience it, but I choose to purge it out. So if you watched and read a lot of books and whatever else, watched movies, read books, and been exposed to a lot of the mainstream programming and so forth, you're basically cooked. There's no way. You're not coming out of here alive. We can look at it that way, but I'm just being playful here. Really, at that point, you say, okay, great. I need to pay attention to this. I'm going to start purging it because right now it's easier to purge it all out, and I'm not going to use that as a reference, but it's paying attention. So, one example, if you have fear coming up, if you have something emotional charge coming up, you want to look at what it is. A lot of times it has to do with a particular experience you had in your life. Now that experience could have started off this small, but because of reinforcement of everything else, for example, somebody may have had, been violated slightly, okay? But what happens? They're seeing more and more people coming out and they're hearing more and more of the violations and the sexual abuse and whatever else, then that little thing starts to grow because what's happening, it may have started off this little thing here, but then you start watching and exposing to other things, and this little thing starts to grow. And it becomes even more impactful. Now the traumaticness, that's a word, I'm going to make it up, the traumaticness increases and it becomes much more influential in your experience, much more powerful in controlling you. You're going to say something.
Yes, James is asking, hi Franco, movies are easy to avoid. I find it hard to enjoy them, but music, what music should we listen to? Soul music?
Well, yes. I mean, music that is soothing, music that feels harmonious to you, because when you're listening to the music, and that's a good point about the movies, but I'll get back to that in a second. But the music, it needs to align with you. So when you're listening to the music, it has to allow you to feel natural in that state. You'll notice a lot of the new music, it's very difficult to listen to, especially if you've gone to a stage where you're becoming more aware of not only its impact, but the energetic. So a lot of the music may be very rebellious, very polarized, very negative, or very stimulating certain old ways of focusing on reality. So when you sense that, when you see that playing out and you can feel it within yourself, then you know that that's not the music for you. Okay? Now, you probably notice certain music you were able to listen to at some point starts to become disfavored. You're not feeling drawn to listen to it. And I've seen that in my own life. There were certain times I could listen to certain music years ago, and then slowly, and then everything became noise. So there was only some music, very instrumental, that is very, the frequencies are really good and harmonizing for you, then that's where you see. So it's really paying attention to how it feels. The same thing with the movies, as I just said about the music, is that as you become more aware, you're going to find that you can't just sit there and look at violence. I know for myself, I can't sit down and look at violence. Okay, I can't, and when I say I can't, I mean I feel very uncomfortable with it because I'm looking at it and there's a misrepresentation, because there's a part of you that sees the beauty and they're reflecting the opposite. Not that you have a judgment about it, but at the same time it's not harmonizing with you, your frequency, whatever it is. If there's even romance or anything of that nature, if it's really still projecting the inverted 3D, 2D part of it, is heartbreak, this and that, love, hate, all of this stuff within the relationships, or not being transparent to each other, not being themselves, you find it that it becomes, you're sensitive to it, to the sense of going, yeah, well, that's, none of it is reflective to who I am and what I now understand and feel within myself. So sitting there and just forcing yourself to watch it, you'll notice it's not appealing. So it's not that you have a judgment about what you're looking at, it just is not in resonance. And why would you expose yourself to something in resonance, which you have to purge anyway? Now, there are going to be occasions you want to say, okay, let me look at the old way of life and see how it feels for me today. That's fine. But at the same time, you'll notice that there's a mismatch more than ever on a lot of areas.
Lena was asking, when working with the ego, that's the talking ego aspect that's always using negative info, and you can't just let it go. How do you let it go? I guess if you're always, your negative ego is always going, and I'm assuming what she's saying is that it's how she can't just let it go. It just keeps going.
Okay.
It's hard.
So the one thing you want to do with the ego, you don't want to resist the ego. You don't want to get in a situation where you have to kill the ego or anything of that nature. Make it your friend first. First of all, look at it and say, okay, I acknowledge your presence. I acknowledge what you're doing. I acknowledge all the stories you're making. I acknowledge the impact that you have. I acknowledge every part of it. And I thank you for all of it because it's kept me company. It's kept me in polarity world. It's kept me in reminding what I'm not. And even though at the time I defined myself in all of that. So you really, you're in a deep, deep appreciation for it and also in tremendous amount of love for it. But you can now just say, okay, we're done with this experience. So when the ego is insistent, be the observer. What? Look, if you're talking about your mind is made up of many resources, okay? Your soul, your human entity, your body, much more expanded soul families, twin souls, you name it. It has a lot of different resources. The mind can be an observer because you have to look at it. The ego mind is a small operating system that seems to be pretty loud that is operating within the mind. So the part of you, the bigger mind, because there's a small mind, which is the ego, and the bigger mind. The bigger mind can go in an observer state. So you sit back and you look at it and say, and listen to, don't fight it, listen to what the ego is saying. Oh, really? Okay. What else can you tell me? How can we play this out? By listening to it, you can see the story. You can see through the story. You can see the resources it's using and so forth. You go, really? We're not even there anymore. We're not even interested in it anymore. You're not going to have judgment about it. You're not going to fight it. You're now having a communication with somebody or some part of you or part of your operating system that has only a limited level of consciousness. Now, it's a pretty powerful operating system. It's an artificial intelligence that has really ingrained into inverted matrix 2D, inverted 3D. But at the same time, you're now looking at and you're having a conversation or observing, because one of the tools I've used myself and I have shared with others, and by listening to it and whatever the story goes, and then you say, so what? What else? So you say, so what else do you have to share? Blah, 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 blah. So what? What else do you have to share? What you're doing is you're not engaging in the story that it's projecting. And you're also forcing it. For example, if it says, you're not good enough, okay? Just a simple example. Okay, how so? Well, look at all this proof. So that was an experience. What else can you tell me about that? What else do you have as a reference at this point that I'm not good enough? Now I'm not capable enough, or whatever you're telling me here. What else? And you keep asking. You go, okay, so what? What else? So what? What else? You get to the end of the line, and then you find that there's nothing there because it cannot sustain, even though it pulls out many, many reasons where you've adopted the idea that you failed. Oh, did I really fail? Yeah, I didn't get a certain outcome, but who told me I had to have a certain outcome? Weren't it you? Weren't you the one? Now, I suggest to write this stuff down when you're doing it, because that way you can stay on track. The ego is very tricky in the sense. But even if you don't get the opportunity to do that, play with it. What else? What else can you say? So what? Oh, well, that guy just said that, or this person just said something to you, and now you feel, reminded you that you're not good enough. So they said that. Why does it matter to me, this whole story that it's not good, I'm not good enough? Where's that coming from? Well, this, and this. So what? What else? So what? And you get to that point. So it's a dance that you make, but you'll notice that as you do that each and every time, because it's not going to turn over and walk away the first time, and sometimes it takes a little. Every time you do that, you're reducing the capacity of its input and so forth. So even when I went in, and even in my own personal experience, so what, what else, or, it gets to that end, it runs out of resources. Because the ego has to self-learn. Of course, it doesn't have the same level of feedback now. So in essence, it has to keep looking for references. But as long as you're not giving power to those references, it's going to keep digging until it can get you. Now, if a trigger comes up of some sort, a certain fear, a certain response, emotional, whatever it is, then there's a story. And they say, okay, what's my story? What's going on there? Why am I feeling this way? Right? Well, such and such. So what? So they did that. Why am I feeling this way? Well, because this, and this, as a kid, whatever it is. Yeah, okay, so what? What does that mean to me? Really, how much truth is in that? You having that type of conversation, you're really now tapping into that operating system that has its own limits. It might be creative. It can become schizophrenic in a sense of polarizing itself and creating multifacets of itself, but you're going to get to the end of the line. So just keep playing with that. And what happens, it just gets quieter and quieter and quieter. And then it just once in a while will throw in something and go, oh, you're back. Nice, interesting to see you. Like, what do you got to offer me today? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, interesting. Not interested. Well, how about this, and this? So what? Not interested. Whatever. So you'll notice that you can do that. It's an exercise that you do. You'll notice that it will shift within yourself. Did you have something else?
Yes. Madeline is asking, can we check and recognize our subconscious programs when they come up to the surface while watching mainstream media? In other words, can we use the mainstream media as a tool?
You can, absolutely. So if you're watching something and it stirs up emotions in you, you're now be able to localize, oh, I just saw this and I feel this way, okay? So at that point, you write that down, whatever you're watching. If a fear comes up, if a concern comes up, an inferiority program comes up, or feeling disabled, or feeling victimized, or anything of that nature, whatever it is, write it out, and then spend some time going in and looking at the source of that. Where did it originate? What was your viewpoint at the time? And is it really real? Is it really still apply to you today? You don't want to go in a sense, oh, I don't like it, I want it out of my life. You want to go in an empowered state, and it's like, okay, great experience, whatever it is, how does it serve me today? And it says, oh, well, it serves you because it keeps you in check. In check in which way? And just work out that way. So you want to, yes, there's a lot of button pushing going on through various individuals in our lives. And of course, we have to understand that other individuals will come and push your buttons just because it's serving you, assisting you. No one's there to harm you. They may play that role only to bring up these programs, but the media does the same thing. For example, all of the stuff, the fear-mongering and everything else that's going on and really accentuating what is playing out, it shows how grounded am I? What story am I giving power to? Oh, that something can hurt me, or that there's something much more powerful than I am, or that I'm, I have to protect myself, or that I'm not safe, or anything of that nature. That leads to different programs that you want to look at. So you always write this stuff down, and when you're asking the question, write down the answers and dig even further until you get to the blind alley sort of thing. You're going to get to that point, and each along the way, you always are checking to see if it still serves you or not. Go ahead.
Susan saying, same with soul themes, lineage programs. Those are tough for her.
Okay. They're all one and the same. Okay. So whatever comes up, All right? So even if it's something from the soul, if the soul has something that it did not manage to accomplish or learn from previous incarnations, and that could be from the human entity and the body too, there are different parts, just see what's coming up and then just dig deeper into it. Okay, I'd like to understand where this is coming from. And sometimes you may have little flashes of your past life or something of that nature. And see yourself, don't be afraid of going into it, and just see yourself in that experience, holding into the consciousness that you are now, the awareness that you have now, so that when you're observing it, you're not observing it from the old state. For example, if you had a past life that was in the 1800s, and you were burned to a stake or whatever was going on, at that point in time, yeah, it was part of the experience, the level of consciousness and so forth, and now all of a sudden you're afraid to speak because the last time you spoke in that particular lifetime, which was something you wanted to clear out, and when I say clear out, get whatever message there is that you are empowered and then clear it out, is like, oh, I'm afraid to speak out because, but you don't know what that is. But if you're digging deeper, you'll get to see, oh, wow, I spoke out and I got burned to a stake or whatever it is. Great. I understand where it's coming from. Now, what state of empowerment was I then? Can I see why I got engaged? Why did it even play out? Well, depending on the state of consciousness you were at that time, you may have felt as a victim or vulnerable, or the fact that you had no say. And I've worked with people on regressions over the years, in the 35 years that I've been doing this work with people, that when we go back to look at it, okay, once we shift their viewpoint by bringing their current viewpoint into it, whatever they felt, that disempowerment that they felt at that time or had no say, actually dissolves that, and it creates a ripple effect throughout the whole thing. So it gets cleared. Now, if it takes you there, that's great. If it doesn't take you there, just bring it current. Okay, I feel what I feel. Just bring it into your current experience. I want to see what that is. Allow yourself to feel it. Observe what the story or belief system that can support it is, and then go through the process of clearing it out. First, acknowledge it, appreciate it, see it how it fits into your thing, send it love, and send it off. Sayonara, goodbye, and put it into the energetic field of sourceness, which is all around you. So that's what you can do on that. Okay? Great. Of course, time goes by, cover lots of stuff, but we're moving very slow. Infinite amount of time. Great. Okay. One other thing I wanted to mention. A lot of times people say, well, you know something? Look, they're rolling out all these massive ideas that we need to vaccinate, we need to do this, we need to do that, that this is the protocol and so forth. Nothing can be rolled out without our consent. Now, a lot of times we give consent because we're in an unconscious state, feeling that we don't have a choice. We're playing this game. There's so-called leaders, so-called dictators, so-called lawmakers, so-called authoritative people, so-called forces and whatever else. But the thing is, unless we consent, nothing can be rolled out. Consent a lot of times is, I'm going to follow whatever they're telling me to do. Okay? Now you can play with it a little bit, but you don't have to go through it in the same degree where you give yourself totally away into it. So that's the important part to understand, that the consent is, do I agree? So if somebody is saying to you, family or otherwise, work or otherwise, media or otherwise, are saying, well, this is the way of life, and this is what you need to do. Unless you choose, agree, and consent to go down that path, it really has no effect on you. In fact, your reality wouldn't even reflect it. So, but if you gave consent, then at any point in time, you can relinquish the consent. So, you're saying, well, I don't say anything. Am I actually giving consent? In a way, you're saying, okay, I'll let it be, the status quo, whatever it is, whatever's being rolled out. In a way, that's a consent. But the thing is, it's not about you saying, I got to fight for my rights, I got to fight for whatever, I have a constitution, or I have this rule, or that rule, whatever it is, that I am, what do you call it, what's that, free person, sovereignty and all of that stuff, right? What's that? A sovereign person or anything of that nature, right? So if you're playing with any of that, you could say, well, I didn't consent or whatever it is. If you truly don't consent, nothing can take place. Collectively, if we say we do not consent, and it doesn't have to be 100%, everybody, even a decent rollout of people saying we do not consent to what we call, rolling out the 5G, or rolling out mandatory vaccination, or rolling out mandatory whatever that is. If we don't consent to have certain people govern us or dictate how our life on a collective scale, then it can't roll out. It can't be part of it. So we have to remind ourselves, if I've given consent, I'm going to take the consent back, and then I'm going to shape my life with that not being a factor in my reality, and more people come to that realization. So in essence, at times we give consent for a small part of it, to get a taste of it, to bring us to a point where we feel ourselves caged and limited, only to say, okay, I've reached saturation point, I'm done with this. And when we say done with this, we're not talking about done because you're afraid, not done because you have a judgment about it, not done because you're frustrated. You're done because it's done. Look at it this way. You can be choosing, let's take diet, for example, right? So you can look at it and say, okay, I'm just going to eat whatever it is. Starting tomorrow, I'm not going to eat anymore all this food that does not conducive for my physicality, or whatever it is, or consuming as much food or anything of that nature. Now, if you have a judgment about it, I can't stand myself, I got to stop eating, or whatever it is, a small portion of people can actually utilize that. In most cases, what happens is not powerful, because you're not committing to change it and not have a judgment about it. You have a judgment, so you want to change it so that you do not see something. You need to go say you have 50 pounds extra weight. I'm just giving you an example, I'm not saying. So here you are looking in the mirror and say, I can't stand the way I look. Well, you're judging your experience. You're judging what your physicality is now reflecting from your past experiences. You need to go, okay, I see where I'm at right now. Does it serve me to be here anymore? Do I want to play it in this way or not? I'm done with following my little tongue, that little square piece at the tip of my tongue that actually likes all these accentuated flavors, and I'm not going to pay attention to my body. But you're doing it because it's a new choice. It's a choice of not frustration, not of judgment, and not of self-hatred. It's a choice is, I choose to be in a more fit body so I can do more, and it feels more in resonance for me. Or anything else. Look at it this way. A relationship is another example. People are in relationships and they can't stand a relationship, whatever it is. Well, first of all, you have to understand relationships of all sorts are tools for us to discover ourselves, to look at our programs, to clear out those programs. You can say, well, I can't stand my relationship and whatever else, but you can still stay there. And every time you walk away, you walk back in, because in essence, you're not really done with it. And if you walk out of that one, you are going to recreate another one with another playmate that's going to play the same role, maybe more accentuated, which is mostly the case. So all of a sudden you're repeating these patterns because you're now looking outside and saying, I have an issue with this and whatever that is. But you're never done with it. When you come to, say you keep going into constant abusive relationships, or relationships where you're the victim and they're the victimizer, a relationship where you're not, on a balance where you both are able to be yourself, and you're always, the one that has to compromise or anything of that nature, you come to the point and say, okay, this is a cool experience. I've had a lot of those opportunities. I replicated it over and over again. I've had several playmates that played out this thing. Am I really done with this? And you come to the point, I'm done. Guess what? You're done. At that point, you can walk away, not run away, not judging away, saying, oh, I got to get out of this too. And I got to get out of this because I don't feel good. Like, I'm okay with the way it is. It doesn't resonate for me. I am really done. So the moment you say I'm done, whatever it is, the eating part, the diet part, the smoking part, the drugs part, the relationship part, work part, whatever it is, when you get to the point you say, I'm done, nothing matters anymore in the sense of, oh, what about this? What about that? If I'm done that game, I'm done the game, and you can move through it. And this is the thing. So it also assists you very powerfully, and it's one very powerful tool to get to the point, I'm done the game, and I choose to move forward without having that particular game in my reality. And that's what you're doing. So the consent, it's like, okay, I've gone down that part, I've gone with the opportunity and so forth, but I'm done going down that part. No longer need to play there. I'm done. And the moment you said you're done, you're done. Because then you're coming from not escapism, not of polarization, not of judgment. You're done because you're done. It doesn't resonate with you anymore. It's not something you want to continue to replicate. And that's it. Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk about a couple other things, and hopefully I can go a lot quicker through the rest of them, because I'm not going to go too deep into it. No? Am I gone too far? I mean, too long?
It's up to you, because we're going to continue doing more episodes.
Yeah, we're true.
Not like we're going to run out.
Of course, of course. So just a couple of tidbits.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll carry on Saturday,
Yeah.
of course, because our next episode is on Saturday. So I just wanted to cover a couple of things. Let's see. Is there any questions around any of that stuff? We have so much clarity now that we're really blossoming, flying, and we're really going into the next level of supercalifragilisticexpialidocious or whatever it is. I make up my own word. Go ahead.
Expialidocious, honey.
Expialidocious. Yes, thank you. All right. Good. I can never say it correctly for whatever reason, and I had actually forgotten until Kimberly reminded me 9 years ago. You know, because he used the word, and I go, oh yeah, I remember hearing that a long time ago, but it was always a mouthful for me, and for some reason it's just a hard way to put it all together. Okay.
Someone's just asking. Okay, first Mena's asking, what about when you say you're done and you think you're done and then you start again? For example, sugar.
Then you're not really done. You're not really done. You may have said done because you're trying to change something, but you really didn't make a commitment, a full commitment within yourself and say, I'm done with this. You know, I'm not going to put any attention to it. So when the body, or not even the body, the tongue really, or the craving part, which is just the program, craving, I need to have sweets, comes into play, you're basically, did you have to say
I'm
something?
just going to say that's not always just the craving for sweets isn't just always about, it could be emotionally related, but it could also be due to other stuff going on in your body that is craving, like sometimes we have parasites and other stuff going on that can
Correct.
want sweets.
Correct. Yeah, so you're going to look at all of those things too. But the thing is, when you're done, it doesn't matter what your body's craving, and like Kimberly just said, the craving a lot of times could be the parasites or the candida, or whatever else that's in your body that's saying, give me sugar because that's my fuel. Or you may have a pattern or association that sugar gives me a kick and a high, and it makes me feel that I'm actually indulging or rewarding myself. You know, you want to look at it. What's the sugar giving me? What's the sugar, or any addiction at this point, but let's play with the sugar now. What is the sugar doing for me? And you can ask your body, how do you feel about the sugar? And you can see the body will respond or will give you a sensation of some sort. But the craving might still be there, and that could be from, like, you know, parasite and stuff like that, which you can get checked and see. But at the same time, even if you don't want to do that and say, okay, I have this craving, and I have no judgment about the sugar, but at the same time, the sugar is not really something that my body's actually enjoying, and I don't feel being enslaved in all that because I'm done with that experience, then you're basically saying, okay, I'm done. But there's no judgment about it. When you say done, when you feel the cravings, you remind yourself, yeah, well, I know what you want, but you're not getting it because we're done with this. I love you, I thank you, I appreciate you, but we're not going there. And you just have to do that. So you don't go back into the patterns, because a lot of times it's a pattern. There's association of what it represents to you, It could be the body's create an attachment to it, and it's not the full body, because the body a lot of times it creates an intolerance for it, and then because it creates that extra intolerance for it, it needs to balance it. But if you pull away from it and not provide it, then the body readjusts again. So there may be some symptoms. What do they call it? Cravings? Not cravings. Withdrawal sort of thing. So you're going to have some withdrawal part, and that's just giving time the body to adjust itself. So if you don't feed into it, then the withdrawal actually changes. So all of that, now the body adjusts its chemistry. Because if you induce certain things in your body, the body accommodates as much as possible with various chemical balancing systems. For example, all of a sudden the sugar is actually, what's that chemical that the body produces? No. The pancreas. Insulin. Okay. So we'll compensate with the insulin, saying, okay, we got to take care of this because we can't use it, we can't burn it, we're not making use of this. So now it has to compensate. So now you're exhausting your pancreas and whatever else, and it starts to say, okay, you're not paying attention, I'm going to shut down and have you really elevate in your blood sugar, and then you're not going to feel well at all. So at this point, it's just making itself notice. So with any form of patterns, addictions, or anything of nature, if you're truly done with that experience coming from a core essence of yourself, say, I'm done with this experience. Doesn't matter what any stimulation that comes along, I'm not going to go there. And then you could say no. And you say no. And the more you say no, eventually it changes that pattern. The body chemistry adjusts, and you're awesome. And the parasites that are going to starve. They're not going to be, repopulating or, giving itself, what do you call it? The nourishment it needs to flourish within itself. So you're basically taking away its fuel source. And it's the same thing with programs. Programs operate on fuel too. And I'm not talking about sugar. We're talking about emotional charges. We're talking about polarization and stuff like that. So the more we go into the neutral, so what? Let's play with this. Whatever it is, guess what? It changes. The same thing with anything. See it that there's a game, or whatever it is. Like, I'm playing with this. Let's play with this. Even when I'm doing, anybody that's ever done sessions with me in the past, I never go, okay, let's go work on this. Let's go look at it. Let's play with this. Because in play, you're much more open. You're not creating rigidity, and you're not creating realism or the intensity of all of that.
Just a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
James is asking, so is the vegan diet preferable? That's from previously when you're talking.
Mm-hmm.
And Kelly is asking, okay, so when you say done, then fear comes up. Is that ego?
Well, of course. If a fear comes up, it's always ego. Any emotional charge, it's ego stimulated. A story is a story. A belief is a belief. Until the ego accentuates it, you really are not going to get an emotion. Emotions are driven by stories that are accentuated by ego. Ego accentuates, even though it's felt throughout the whole body, it's basically signaling the body to react a certain way. Okay? So if you're getting fear coming up, you say, okay, what are we afraid of? So for example, I want to cut off this part of my whatever that is. I'm taking this out of my my experience. And then the fear comes up. Then you can say, okay, I just chose this. I'm putting an end to this, or I'm done with this. And then I had a fear come up. Then you ask yourself, okay, what's this fear about? What are we afraid of? We're afraid this happens. Okay, so that happens. What about that? What else are we afraid of? What does it give us? What reasoning do we have to hold on to that? So you'll notice that as you're going into it, you're going to notice that you're going to look at other stories that are connected to it. And you're going to clear that part of it. So that's a good point. Thank you. So when you're saying, okay, that I'm done, and a fear or an emotion or a lack or a loss or something that comes up, there's another associated story. So you want to go and look at the rest of the story, which is good. This is perfect because the done brought up a hidden story or a story that you weren't able to see before, or a belief system that is there that the ego likes to use. Look at it this way. The ego may have projected the inverted matrix, the 3D, 2D, inverted 3D, I mean, and 2D, and still playing out a certain part of that. But the ego right now is very much a tool for us. Because the ego goes into your archives, looks at a story, and brings it up and builds it up into something very powerful. So the moment you feel that, you're going to go, okay, what story is associated? Ego, what are you bringing up? So use the ego as a tool rather than the driver. Okay? And the same thing with emotions. Emotions are part of the human experience, but when the emotions run you, then you're no longer the emotion is exactly the tool that you want to use. But the emotions coming up is an indicator there's something live and ready to be looked at. So the ego, whatever story it brings you to, you're going to look at the story, you're going to look at and find what all those underlying programs, belief systems, and so forth that are still active and can bring you back to the old you. And I'll go back to the vegan thing after.
Yeah, this is just what you're talking about. Alyssa is asking, how do you know when you're done, when sometimes your soul isn't done? So it's really about the emotions that are, there's still emotions and triggers coming up. You're not done, even if your ego mind wants to tell you that you are.
The only reason your soul will keep anything active at this point in time is that it wants to uncover more of its limits, more of the programs that are associated with any part of it. You know, your soul's mandate, your human entity's mandate, your body's mandate is to get as clear as possible and most present as possible. Be the current, most highest aspect of yourself now, today, this moment, whatever it is. So it's going to actually keep any part of it. So when it says, I'm not done, it's only not done because there's still associated stories that will bring it up. So it's going to stay there, and you will know when it's done. So you say, okay, it's not done. But if it comes up, and say, okay, what else is there? So now you write it down. This came up. What's going on here? What does this mean to me? Or whatever it is. You're gonna do the research. But if anything, please write it down. And I can't emphasize this anymore because the more you write it down, the more you stay on track. The ego is very powerful. And I've said this before. I'm just reminding you. It's very, very powerful to distract you, to shift it. If you've even tried just doing yourself, when you have a facilitator with you, then one person is keeping you on track. Okay? So, like when I've been working with people, I keep asking the question and directing them along the way, okay, to keep them on track. When you're doing it on yourself, it's harder to just keep on track if you're not writing it down and digging deeper. Because if ego, all of a sudden you're going down this path and it takes you off on right field, left field, any direction, and you go, oh, what was I even actually looking at? You know, so it's, but you're just saying, no, we're staying true to this. I want to get to the bottom of that. And you just keep writing the answers and asking the questions and so forth until you get to the core of it. Then you can go through the process of acknowledging its presence, thanking for it, loving it, and letting it go. Go ahead.
I know you've talked about this before, but can you just quickly, Evelyn wants to know, what is the difference between feeling and emotion?
Okay, that's on my list actually, okay. But I'm not going to get there today. But the difference is, just to give you a little bit, and I'll get into it a little more later on. Not today, though. Okay, so the difference between feelings and emotion. Feelings are a sense that you feel within yourself as a knowing. It's very calm. It's a part of you that is receiving an information or feeling or connecting with yourself. Okay, feelings are yes, no, do I go this path or not path? I don't feel interest or drawn to this or whatever it is. It's very calm and clear at the same time. Emotions are reactive. Emotions go up and down, and emotions carry a charge. And a lot of times there's a story attached to the emotion. So there's a fear or something else that comes to the surface. So it's really paying attention, because a lot of times we say, well, what feelings do we go? Well, there's emotional feelings, and the emotional feelings are usually create a constricting in your body or create sometimes even an excitement, which is great too. But you have to pay attention. If it's stimulating something of any polarity or any accentuation, then that's an emotional response. I feel fear, okay? I'm feeling fear. That's an emotional response. I'm feeling this is not the direction for me. I'm feeling that, I'm really done with this. I'm feeling, an intuitive connection that this not in resonance or whatever it is. It's very clear. It's very peaceful and calm. It's the same way as when we're asking our higher self. A lot of times say, how can I tell what's coming into my mind is my higher self? Your higher self will come with no emotional charge and will always be the first split second and says, well, this is your answer, or this is what's going on, okay? And then the ego jumps in right after, what about this, and what about that, what happened here, what happened there, whatever it is, and that's all the other additional noise, and it's usually louder. It's that first intuitive, that little quiet voice, and it's not all that quiet, but it comes in very clear. It doesn't shake up things. It's that knowing part. So that's the feeling. We learn to feel. You can feel other people's energies and what somebody's going through, but if it triggers an emotion in you, if it triggers a story, if it triggers a polarization in you, what you did is you felt what somebody else is feeling, and that feeling reminded you of a program or story or something that your body's responding, and that your ego's responding, or anything of that nature, where it says, oh, we got an active story. So the thing is, and I've said this for many, many years, is that we don't pick up people's energy and live that energy. We, yes, tune into that energy. We receive that imprint of that energy, but for you to feel and stimulate you or create a discomfort in you, there has to be a live alignment of an active program or story, that frequency, that feeling, or that energy that you felt from someone is triggering something within you. So you want to really understand that. If you're feeling bad about something, even if you say, well, I'm feeling, what's happening to the world, or feeling with a friend or a family member or child, whatever it is, you feel what they're going through. In your neutral, clear state, you can feel what they're feeling. You have an appreciation for what they're feeling. You have an understanding of what they feel. And you have, what's that word?
Intuition?
No, not intuition. Not a consciousness. Compassion. Thank you. You have a compassion, but it's not the compassion that is polarized. It's not the compassion that is programmed, feeling bad for someone. You feel the energy and go, oh, I understand where they're at. How can I share with them? And it's not a compassion, oh, this is bad for you. Oh, I feel so sorry for you. You could say, yes, this can be difficult for you, and I can understand that. But we have to also look at it, whatever that is. So you have an appreciation that they're going. You're not there to get them out of whatever is there, because that's there to assist them. It is there for it. So true compassion as who you are, is an appreciation for everybody's experience without any interference, but always providing clarity without the savior method of coming in. I understand what you're going through, and I know that this is serving you. How can I best serve you so that you can get what you muted, transform it, step out of it, and move forward? And that's what you're looking at. So there's no poor me. It's like, oh, perfect creation for them. May not be looking so ideal on a common, or what we call a collective idea, but it's perfect for them because that's what makes the change. Look at how many times people have had major ailments or major breakdowns or major whatever, and then there's a breakthrough or a shift that happens with them, which wouldn't have not happened unless they went through that. And the only reason I went through that, that was necessary because of all the barriers and propping up that was done with program stories that oh my God, I can't drop that. How many times people have lost something and it's like, first you react in fear, oh my God, what am I going to do without it? And then it's like, oh, this is pretty cool, you know, and now I can design something new. I can step into a new reality, a new relationship, new life, new whatever, job, whatever it is, new career, whatever it is. So the loss is not a loss. It's an opportunity we create, an opening we create. And that's as far as if there's nothing else, then I won't. Oh, the vegan diet. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We have to understand the makeup of our body. Okay? It was never designed. And I know that I'm going to have people say whatever, contradicting that. It may have, oh, I went to nutritional school and whatever, these are things are necessary. Well, you have to understand, the body itself, in its pure natural state, doesn't even need food. Okay? Because it takes energy from the sun, it takes energy from the air, it takes energy from the water, it takes energy from the planet. All of these energies are moving. But we do have a digestive system. We do have a system that does process what we call food. Now, our body has that because it wanted to create an experience of intimacy with sentient beings, with whatever is going on, what I'm talking about, the plant life. So the body itself is constructed to be able to process through it and utilize the information, the energies that are in certain foods. And those foods are our body's designed mainly for fruit. It was basically exclusively for fruit. Now, the vegetarian or vegetable part got plugged in. Now, we can't really process vegetables thoroughly. So, if you look at any animals that are pure vegetables, they have double stomachs, they have different digestive systems and so forth to be able to handle that. The fruitarians have a different chemistry. Now, the introduction of eating meat and fish and these other types of protein was something that the body had to force adapt to itself because all of a sudden this idea came that we needed to do this, which was part of the experience because it wasn't originally from there. That introduction was 10,000 years ago, and that's when we disconnected ourselves and whatever else from getting the energy without food, because food was only an option that we can exercise at any point in time to have an intimate connection with whatever the fruit. So if you're going to eat an orange, you have an intimate connection with the orange. The orange has a lot of information, whatever else. The body flourishes from that because it's learning, sharing, whatever it is. So vegan diet is closer to our design. Fruitarian is the closest. However, we have to understand the body's adopted itself, so you're going to adjust accordingly. Right now, the energies that are being supported is pushing us more and more out of the necessity, or not even the necessity, but the programming of the body needing to consume flesh foods, okay, fish, animal products, and things, including dairies and whatever else. Now, food has vibrations. Now, there's two levels. Eating an animal or a fish, whatever it is, you're taking in the energies that are coming in. You're taking in the hormones, you're taking the genetic encodements, you're taking in whatever that the animal carries within itself, and you bring it in, and it's a foreign component to yourself. So it adjusts your frequency accordingly, and it strains the body in many, many ways. So when we're talking about that, what's happening is as we become more aligned to our higher frequency, you're going to notice that your tendency to take on those food, you will feel the mismatch much more powerfully, even though it's always been there. When we're taking, vegetarian food, you're not taking the same encodements. It's a different encodement. It's closer to nature, and it's actually not disrupting the physicality as much. And it's in some ways, it's harmonizing it in a way in that. Not only that, the other component is the way that animals are treated. The animals are it really changes the chemistry within themselves, which we're inducing in ourselves. So your body's always taking all these these codes coming in, and then it has to try to decipher and change it so that it keeps you aligned with your own true codes. So this is why some people have experienced ailments. But what you're looking at is you want to support the higher frequency and the higher consciousness, then the vegetarian vegan diet will be more in alignment for that, for you. Also the quantity of food and how often you eat, all of that will adjust. You just have to pay attention to it, listen to your body when you ingest something, how it feels. Now you may be in a transitional point where you may just cut it down a bit, whatever. But what I can say is, I'm not here to tell you about how to live your life or anything. I'm sharing with you the design of the body, how the body responds, and if you pay attention, you'll see it. I'm not making this stuff up, okay? And many people have started to notice that a vegan diet is more supportive. Now, I want to throw one other component in. A vegan diet is not a vegan diet if you're talking about it doesn't have any animal product, but we're running it through a factory, we're processing it to death, we're chemically inducing all types of things, and we're changing its natural state. It's still better than one way, but in the same, you're still creating. So a lot of people say, well, you know, here we are, we went vegetarian or vegan, and we're not healthy. Well, you have to look at it. How close are you to nature? If it doesn't have, if it's the most freshest and most natural state, then that is keeping its more true frequency, its true energy. Whenever you're processing it and you're plugging all types of things in it just so that you create an intense taste sensorial component, you're changing and denaturalizing it, then it doesn't react and respond in your body the same way. So if you're going to eat vegetables and fruits, eat it in the most natural state possible. So, you know, saying, well, I'm giving up red meat or burgers, and I'm not going to go to a vegetarian burger. Well, you have to understand a lot of those vegetarian burgers, Beyond Beef or whatever, well, I don't know whatever they call it, but there's a lot of different ones out there that are being introduced. They're not in their natural state in any way, shape, or form because they're trying to replicate it, so there's different chemicals in it, different processes and so forth, and it's not its natural state, so the very frequency. There might be a slight improvement. There is an improvement from eating the processed meat part to processed vegetable part, but that's not really true sustaining. The odd indulgement, fine, the body can say with it, but you want to go in as the most natural possible.
Changes the frequency of the food.
Can you say that again?
I was just saying it just changes the frequency of the food
Yes, it does.
every time you do something to it.
Yeah, every time you process it, you run it through something, you're changing the energy imprint of it, you're changing the cellular structure of it, you're changing its own integrity of what it is there to share. So the amount of sunlight, you have to look at vegetables and fruits, it carries pockets of sunlight, which are spectrums of light. And that light induces or supports your spectrum of light. So the other thing is exposing yourself to the sun, exposing yourself to nature and so forth, kind of really creates more balance within yourself. So every time you process it, you're changing that so that the sunlight part of it is being negated. So you're taking those frequencies and you're changing the frequency. You were going to say something.
Well, this is a big subject, but
We're
Liz is just asking, if you don't actually believe that vegan diet is good for you, then it's not, correct?
Well, if you're holding the whole idea that a vegan diet is not for you, then, you know, because you have a strong belief around that and your body's not complaining, then you're in alignment with that frequency and that's fine. But, you know, in the sense, realistically, when we bring ourselves to our natural state, okay, more of our natural state, then you will notice that you shift away from that. But the belief is very powerful. And belief, like I said, the media, the different boards, the milk board, the meat board, the fish board, whatever boards there are there, that are convincing us that we need to have that, even the dietary layouts that, you know, governmental puts out there, whatever it is. If we have a belief that I need to have protein, I need to have this type of protein, then the moment you stop going there, you're going to start finding that it's your body's is saying, oh, there's an incongruence here because we believe this, but we're not doing it. Then maybe I'm missing out, so I'll give you that sensation. But the thing is, I will share this and you use your own resonance. This is for anybody and everybody. If you go to a vegan diet, you will notice that it changes the intensity of your response emotionally and physically too. Okay? So if you're very agitated, very driven, and very, stubborn and whatever else in whatever part of your life, and you feel that you can flame up very quickly, yes, the ego's doing its job, programs and whatever else, but you're also ingesting things that actually elevate that part because it's out of mismatch in your true frequency. So it's something that you kind of shift around and you say, well, I got to have meat every single day, and the belief is there, and the moment you don't have it, you're going to replicate a feeling that you don't feel good. Remember, the body is adjusted to it, and then when it's not there, you have the withdrawal part, but you have to allow yourself to say, okay, I'm going to start weaning off and focus on something else. And then what happens, the body gently just shifts into that, and it creates more of an alignment with that. And you'll notice your emotional response, the calmness and everything else becomes more elevated in that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's not something you have to run out and change right away. It's something I think that will naturally occur as we shift within ourselves. Your diet will shift and your preferences around not just food, but lots of things, as we talked about. Television, distractions, all those things will shift as well. So it's not about if you don't eat a certain way, you're not spiritual, you're not a good person or anything like that, because it can be quite polarized too. Mm-hmm. It's about doing what feels good for your body when you're ready to do it. It's like quitting smoking. You can know it's bad for you to smoke, or you know that you'd feel better if you didn't smoke, but until you're really damn ready to stop smoking, that's when it's going to be beneficial to you and you'll be able to do it.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be able to do it. So the thing is too, the way it's working for most people at this point in time is that they start to shift their preference in self-awareness, self-discovery, tapping in more of their essence, their vibration starts to change and so forth. And all of a sudden you'll notice what you're drawn to starts to become less and less appealing. So the shifting starts to occur where you wean off the non-vegetarian or vegan diet, and you now start to swing more into the vegan diet, because now what you're doing is you're creating a balance with that energy of it. Because this is the thing, the same thing like you said, television, whatever else, you lose the appeal or even the effect that it had, because now what was music to you, what was entertaining to you, now becomes, what's the word? Not an irritant. Yeah, I guess you can. In a way, it's an irritant. It feels like a mismatch, and it's like it doesn't resonate. You always say what you could sit and watch before you can't. And I noticed that myself. If there's something playing out and I'm in a group or whatever it is, in most cases, if it doesn't feel in alignment with myself or whatever it is, I have no interest in it whatsoever. And that's it. And your preferences change because your focus is more empowering. And now what still reminds you, like we were saying before, what still reminds you, I still have it up anywhere? No. Of the 2D and inverted 3D and inverted matrix becomes less and less and less and less. Inverted matrix becomes less and less appealing because you're changing. And everything that the inverted matrix and all of this said that, we needed to dominate the planet, and we have to, eat this, do that, whatever it is, becomes, something that you lose your whole pull towards and preference to it. It just starts to drop away. And this is what people find. I've been hearing it for years now where people say, I'm eating less. I've noticed that I can't eat what I used to eat. I've noticed that my body reacts certain ways. I've noticed that when I eat this, I feel more antsy. I feel more emotional. Or when I consume this or do this, it could be just some form, it doesn't feel right for me. That's because you're shifting. And then you're trying to bring it, what's happening is you're bringing everything into alignment. Okay, we're good? All right.
It's a good place to stop.
Yes, I'm not going any further because we're almost at the 2-hour mark
Yeah.
now. This is the longest one.
Yeah.
Didn't plan to do that today. Plus, I had a long list of things I wanted to cover. Okay, so we'll see you Saturday, and we will continue. Either we make it a new episode or part 5, and we'll have to decide on that. But anyways, we'll send the announcements or plug in the announcements on Facebook and YouTube and so forth as soon as we have the promotional component of it. Sometimes I can't even think of the words.
I think you're tired now, honey.
I'm getting tired. You're right. Okay. So till next time, go have some fun. If you'd like to get some more resources, check the links below. If you'd like to support, have more of this coming out to you, please support us financially. Again, if it resonates with you, if it doesn't, don't matter. It's it's whatever. We're not pleading, begging, asking, or anything of that nature. We're open. We're appreciative. It's supportive for us, but it's up to you. So, till next time, have some fun.